And I give the call to the member for Hughes.
Thank you, Acting Madam Speaker. This morning I'd like to talk about a most appalling, ill-considered decision by the New South Wales Planning and Assessment Commission to approve a concrete recycling plant at Moorebank. Madam Deputy Speaker, in this decision they have simply ignored the facts. They have showed a complete ignorance of the dangers of particulate matter in air pollution. And their format and their decision, Madam Speaker, and the way they've gone about this, it places real question marks over the credibility and the legitimacy of the New South Wales Planning and Assessment Commission. Now, what the basis of my beef, Madam Speaker, is around the proponents of this development, complete failure to do any assessment or any modelling of what's called PM2.5 particulate matter. Now, Madam Speaker, this was drawn to the Planning Assessments Commission. It was drawn to their specific attention during the public hearing. The planning assessment were made fully aware that the proponent had failed in its duty to model or do any assessment of this dangerous pollution, and yet, Madam Deputy Speaker, they simply closed their eyes and they closed their ears. Now, the place to start in this, there is a requirement, a statutory requirement under the New South Wales Environment Protection Authority, the EPA, sets out in what's called their approved methods for modelling and assessment of air pollutants in New South Wales. Clause 3.1 of this assessment guideline says that all sources of air pollution must be identified. All sources, Madam Speaker. It's not a matter of pick and choose what ones you think you can get away with and leave out the harmful ones. All sources must be identified. And this is where the failure comes from. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, particulate matter, as a definition, it's the microscopic solid and liquid matter suspended in the Earth's atmosphere. It's not one particular chemical substance. Its sources are extremely varied, and its classification is by size rather than substance. Now, there's three main classifications. There's what's known as PM10, which is coarse particulate matter. There's PM2.5, which is fine particulate matter. And there's PM0.1, which is known as ultrafine particulate matter, Madam Deputy Speaker. Each of them are a subset of each other. Now, it's known, the literature, the academic literature, makes it clear that particulate matter is a known source, both fine, coarse, and ultrafine particulate matter is a known source from concrete recycling. That is beyond doubt. But why should we be specifically concerned about particulate matter? Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, on the 17th of October 2003, the International Agency for Research on Cancer announced it actually classified particulate matter as a carcinogenic to humans. This is not CO2 or something speculative. This is a carcinogenic to humans, and it's based on sufficient evidence that exposure to it causes lung cancer, Madam Deputy Speaker. That is what we were talking about. And yet, Madam Deputy Speaker, it wasn't modelled. There was no assessment. And, Madam Deputy Speaker, it's the fine particulate matter that we should be most concerned about. Even the New South Wales Environment Protection Agency have stated the particulate matters are of most concern are the fine particulates less than 2.5 microns, known as PM2.5. For unlike larger particles, these smaller particles are invisible to the naked eye and can be breathed deep into the lungs and even pass into the bloodstream. Yet, Madam Deputy Speaker, this was not modelled, this was not assessed, it's a known source, it was drawn to their attention, and yet they failed to look at it. This is an absolute disgrace and a complete failure of this New South Wales Planning Assessment Commission. Now, why perhaps did they not want to model it, Madam Deputy Speaker? Well, we have some standards that are currently being negotiated which recommends that we should have a maximum concentration at 8 microns per cubic metre as a standard set for nationally, Madam Deputy Speaker. Well, if you have a look at the Liverpool Air Quality Monitoring Station, for the last 12 months, we are already above 8 microns per cubic metre. We're at 8.6. So we are substantially above a threshold that we say harms human health. We have here a concrete recycling plant that will release more of this deadly carcinogenic into the atmosphere, and we have the New South Wales Planning Commission assessment closing their eyes and not even looking at there's been a failure to model. This is an absolute disgrace, Madam Deputy Speaker. An absolute disgrace and failure by these people. It is simply not good enough. Now, I am glad that the Liverpool Council are appealing this to the Environment Courts in New South Wales, Madam Deputy Speaker, but these people must be held to account for their failure. They cannot sit there and have these highly paid jobs as commissioners on this bench and simply ignore the evidence when it's a specific form of pollution that's known as a cancer-causing agent already when it's above World Health Organisation standards, Madam Deputy. This is a disgrace, and I'll continue to argue and fight this case.